Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and with the news that an ICC prosecutor, a British lawyer no less, has applied for arrest warrants for senior members of Hamas and the Israeli government, maybe time to discuss the latest political implications. Before getting on to the subject of the prosecutor here, though, who, remember, has applied for warrants, the ICC has not, as some are suggesting, granted them as yet. But it's worth looking at where we are with this mess. So first of all, let us be crystal clear here. The attacks on October the 7th and the subsequent siege of Gaza had nothing to do with either resistance or defence. Resistance does not murder civilians. It focuses on the oppressors. And defence does not deliberately or recklessly murder civilians either. From the point of view of Hamas, they wanted this siege because they knew how Netanyahu would react. They murdered innocent Israelis in the most brutal manner possible and knowingly sacrificed tens of thousands of innocent Palestinians because they knew the Israeli government would play right into their hands. And Netanyahu did not disappoint them. The world has seen the Israeli government commit the most terrible atrocities. And Hamas knew that their allies and assorted useful idiots would conflate this with the entire state of Israel, despite the fact that the biggest protests against the siege have been taking place inside Israel. Netanyahu not only acted as he did because it's the sort of thing he would do, but he was facing serious legal problems domestically. And a good war is brilliant for dodging domestic scrutiny. But it has left Israel in a massive hole. Likud's coalition partner threatening to pull out the government as a direct result of not only what's happening now, but what Netanyahu says he wants to do. So they don't want Israel to manage Gaza. They want a Palestinian Authority backed up by international support to do so. And so just like with any war which had non-military motivations, the situation has gone quagmire. Now, I'm not going to make the mistake so many others do and play at international human rights court. I don't get to decide who has broken which laws. I'm not going to casually wave my uneducated hand about and say, oh, they broke this law or that law. But it seems almost certain that the Israeli government, as well as Hamas, have broken international human rights laws in a fairly blatant and major way. I'm not a doctor either, but if someone's foot's pointing the wrong way, I'm going to look at them and go, yeah, I think that leg's a bit broken. And the problem for Israel is that their government have boxed them into a corner now. Even if Netanyahu is brought down internally and quickly and a new government is formed, which doesn't seem to have happened at the moment, it will still be very difficult for them to pick up the pieces of their international reputation. The only reason, and I mean the only reason they've been able to keep ploughing ahead like this is because there are too many lunatics in America with enough political influence to prevent the United States forcing a cessation. Israel have done themselves absolutely no favours here. And many of those who profess to support Israel have done them no favours in making excuses for what's been happening. Like when your friend is about to do something monumentally stupid and self-destructive, you should talk them out of it, not work on a plan to bury the bodies. The Israeli government have no plan for military victory, because there were no clearly set out military objectives in the first place. It was very difficult to see how Israel comes away with their country safer than when it began. It was all supposed to be about protecting their citizens. They've made their citizens less safe. But we can see how Hamas can come out of this more powerful than when they began. And dropping more bombs on children is not going to change that outcome. It only makes it worse. Israel is now taking more casualties of its own. That is a sure way to lose even more public support back home. There's recent footage, it was a weekend, wasn't it, which showed an embarrassing moment. Netanyahu was seeing injured Israeli soldiers. One of them begged him to stop the offensive. Also made mention of the fact that Netanyahu's offspring is safely abroad studying. But there will come a point where international observers are going to have proper access to Gaza. Like Israel is currently working on the following, it's operating on the following tactic. There's no neutral verification of these claims. You just believe in Hamas and everything they say. Where's the independent evidence? Whilst at the same time not allowing independent observers to gather that evidence, quite a number have been killed. That can't continue forever. There will have to come a point where the situation settles down and international observers can begin proper investigations. What they find is going to be horrific. I mean, what we've heard is horrific enough. After October the 7th, Hamas revealed themselves as monsters. Israel at this point, in the back and forth cycle, were the victims, massive amounts of international support. They could have remained like that. They could have won support for concerted action against Hamas politically. Israel could have said, this is why we need to deal with Hamas. They could have appealed to the international community, cannot allow this to happen. They could have taken the high road on this. But they chose to make themselves, oh, you think you're monsters? We'll show you what a monster can really do. And because their crimes are grander in scale, they are the ones with the most to lose. People have pointed out that Hamas are also named in these applications for prosecution. Absolutely. I don't think the tankies would be making much mention of that. But, as others have pointed out, Hamas had no international reputation to be trashed in the first place. We all knew that they were dickheads. Israel had an international reputation, certainly in some parts of the world. So now, what about these applications for arrest warrants? Well, like I say, they are just applications for now. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. The application has been made by a British human rights lawyer, an experienced ICC prosecutor. He's also been backed by quite a few other British lawyers who wrote about why they helped with this action in the Financial Times. I'll post a link, of course, but it may be behind a paywall, I'm not sure. But what will be the material impact? Now, that's less certain. Lots of people getting excited about the news here, but international law is not consistently applied. For example, I've seen more than one person ask why applications for arrests can be made for senior members of Hamas or the Israeli government, but not, say, the Chinese government for the murder of Uyghurs or the Syrian government for the murder of Syrians. In both cases, the casualties there dwarf those in Gaza and Israel, even if we go by the figures released by Hamas, which may themselves be inflated. The deaths in Syria, the deaths in Syria, it's like 500,000. The deaths in China, it's like nearly 2 million. And that's true. The International Criminal Court is not a sort of world police enforcing the law without fear or favour. It works on the basis of international support because they cannot demand compliance. They've got no real power. That is not to say the pressure can work in both ways, however. The ICC would not convict innocent people. It's just that they do not always prosecute guilty people. So yes, it's not an entirely fair system. But this also just serves to highlight what a mess the Israeli government have landed themselves in. Like, when even Assad is not going to be bothered by the ICC, it shows just what a big mess Netanyahu has made of things, that the ICC might issue an arrest warrant for him and his colleagues. I mean, this time last year, Israel had far too much support for such a move to have had any chance of success. And it still might not succeed. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I don't know if the court will grant the warrants, and I don't know how long it will take to decide. But Karim Khan KC, who is the lead prosecutor here, is very experienced. He will not have made these applications if he wasn't sure about his evidence. He will feel that his evidence is strong enough for these applications to be worthwhile. He's not acting alone. As I say, he's had other human rights experts, British human rights experts, supporting him. And when you counterpoint this with the ease with which you could find evidence of far higher death tolls from, in other parts of the world, like Assad, as I say, who will not be fearing the ICC tapping on his shoulder, it shows just how badly the Israeli government messed up, because in theory their support should be even stronger. If the arrest warrants are issued, I think there's a decent chance they'd actually be actioned. Normally you would think, like, Hamas's leaders won't care. I'm not sure I can see them being brought before The Hague. They'll get sanctuary in countries who won't discharge the warrants. There are countries who don't care enough about international law or how they are seen as supporting international law to action the warrants, so they'll just get sanctuary there. But Israeli leaders, where are they going to go? The sort of countries they would like to visit, I think, need to at least pretend to care about international law, including the United States, I think. And even that'll include Israel itself. Like, if Netanyahu falls, would a future Israeli government that is trying to rebuild its shattered reputation, will it really be able to do that if it is protecting someone wanted for human rights crimes? And although I say that international law is not consistently applied, if it is going to exist at all, it has to give the impression to enough people that enforcement exists. Like, most people around the world are aware of international law, they're aware of international courts, and they just assume that the courts do the work of enforcement. You know, the crimes against humanity committed by both Hamas and Likud here are so visible that if there are no consequences, that's going to be reported far and wide. So people will see that. And because the crimes being committed are so obvious, it will look to a lot of people around the world that international law means nothing. And it will therefore make it easier for unscrupulous fascist leaders around the world to say, well, why are we following international law when it's not enforced? We have them in this country. Some conservatives want us, for example, to pull out of the European Convention on Human Rights. So I think, I'm not an expert, I think there would have to be an understanding, surely on an international scale, that justice will need to be seen to be done here because it's such a visible event. People are looking at this, and therefore they're going to be looking at the courts as well in the aftermath. Netanyahu is messed up royally, but those who stood by him when they could have stopped him have also now made life more difficult for those they're charged to protect. Hamas are a danger to the Israeli people. They want the Israeli people exterminated. Israel does have the right to defend itself, but doing so now will be made more difficult because people will not trust that when Israel is carrying out defensive action, that it's not really trying to bomb Palestinians into extinction or permanent exile. That is a problem that they're going to have to take a long time to deal with, and they cannot hope to do so unless they denounce the madmen who destroyed their international reputation in the strongest possible terms. But there we are. Those are my thoughts anyway. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.